For Module 2, Lesson 1, we are going to be multiplying multi-digit whole numbers by multiples of 10 in order to prepare ourselves by multiplying multi-digit numbers together. One of the vocabulary words we really want to pay attention to for this lesson is the commutative property. And in the commutative property, you see that word commute. And that means that the numbers are able to move around when you are multiplying and adding. So if you had the multiplication sentence 8 times 5 times 3, that would be the same as 5 times 3 times 8. Both equations would give you the same answer. And the same would apply for addition. But it does not work for division and subtraction because you have to start with your certain amount. Today in our lesson, we started with 4 times 3, and we solved that equation and got 12. Then we used that knowledge to help us answer the next equation in the pattern. The next equation in the pattern was 4 times 3 tens, and we know that 3 tens written in standard form would be 30. To get 3 tens, we also know that that would be 3 times 10. And then we have our 4 in the front, and we drop down that multiplication sign. Now, we can use our 3 times 4 from the top to help us with this problem, and we, using the commutative property, can say, okay, I know that 4 times 3 is going to be 12. And then we finish up with our multiplying by 10. And we know that when we have that 0 on our answer, that anything multiplied by 10, we add that 0 to n, so it would be 120. The other way you can look at it up here, without going to numbers, is 4 times 3 is 12. And then you have this leftover tens here, and that has to go somewhere, so it's 12 tens. And when you write 12 tens, that is also equal to 120. So there's 2 different ways that I solved that problem, and both answers ended up with 120. Now we're going to use that same idea and solve our next equation. Now we're going to do 4 tens times 3 tens. And if I'm going to be doing it the same way I did here, 4 tens is equal to 40, and 3 tens is equal to 30. So really, 4 tens times 3 tens is asking us to do 40 times 30. We can also rewrite 4 tens as 4 times 10, and then we have that multiplication in the middle that we drop down, and then 3 tens can be rewritten as 3 times 10. Now, using my commutative property, I can start grouping numbers together. I know that 4 times 3 is 12, so I'm going to group 4 times 3 together. So I've used this 4, and I've used the 3, and so I'm left with my 10 and 10, so I'd have 10 times 10 because I'm working within multiplication. Now I like to do parentheses because it just helps me see better which numbers that I group together. I grouped 4 and 3 together, and then I grouped 10 and 10 together. Now I can solve 4 times 3. I knew that. That's 12. And I'm multiplying that 12 by 10 times 10, which is equal to 100. So 12 times 100, I have 2 zeros here, so I would add those onto the end of my number. So I would end up with 1,200. The next pattern in this is we're going to do 4 tens times 3 hundreds. And we know that 4 tens is equal to 40. and 300 is equal to 300. So this problem is really asking us to multiply 40 by 300. So following that same pattern, I can rewrite 4 tens as 4 times 10. And then I'm multiplying that by 3 times 100. Then using my commutative property, I can start grouping like numbers together. So I know 4 times 3, so I'm going to put those two together. And so I've used my 4 and 3, and now I'm left with 10 and 100. So my next kind of set of numbers that I'm multiplying is 10 multiplied by 100. And then, like I said before, I like to group my kind of like numbers together, showing with parentheses. So I'm grouping 10 and 100 together, and I'm grouping 3 and times 4 together. So I would do 12 times 3, 4 times 3, which is 12. And I'm multiplying that by my product of 10 times 100, which is 1,000, because I have those 3 zeros. Then to get my answer, I have 12, and then I'm adding those 3 zeros from the 1,000. So my answer is 12,000. So in each of these problems, I am using what I know about powers of 10 and zeros and the commutative property to really explain how I can get the answer by breaking down the problem into a friendlier problem. So in homework, let's look at 1A. The problem that they're giving you and asking you to think about is 43 times 30. And they're saying, okay, let's break it down into kind of friendly numbers like we did up here. We broke 4 times 30 down into 4 times 3 10s. So they're saying, think about 43 as 43 ones, and think about 30 as 3 10s, so that you are just multiplying your whole numbers here. So you'd have 43 times 3. So we have 3 times 3 is 9, and 4 times 3 is 12. So I end up with 129 by multiplying 43 times 3, but it's not 129, it's 129 tens, or we could rewrite it as 129 times 10. And we know that when we multiply by 10, we add that 0 to the end. So your answer down here, 43 times 30, would be 129 adding the 0 on, so it would be 1,290.